Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, texts 18 and 19. Text 18. Naiva tasya kritenardho na kriteneha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid ardhavyapashrayah. Text 19. Tasmadasaktaha satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purushaha. So if we recall, in the previous verse Krishna said, one who has attained the platform of Atmarati or satisfaction, pleasure in Krishna consciousness, for him there is no obligatory duty in this world. But if you don't, because you are working on the field of sense gratification, you have to perform certain duties, certain yagna, to cleanse that sinful reactions from such sense gratificatory activities. So, Atmarati, the person, has the exception. He does not need to be obliged by any prescribed duties. And the similar thing is explained again here in this 18th verse. Tasya naiva kritena ardha. Ardha means some purpose. So Krishna is saying naiva kritena ardha means a self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duty save and except activities in Krishna consciousness. So because he does not, there is no ardha, there is no purpose for him to do any activity for his own sense gratification. There is nothing that he is trying to achieve for himself. That is called naiva kritena ardha. There is no ardha for by doing that activity for him. He is doing only for Krishna. Therefore, naiva tasya kritena ardha. The second line says, na akriteneha kaschana. Akritena means inactivity, not doing. So that means na akritena means Krishna consciousness is not inactivity. Na akritena. So yes, there is no need for him to perform any activity, but it doesn't mean that he does not do any activity. Na akritena. Because Krishna consciousness is not inactivity. That will be explained in the next verse. And then the third line says, na chasya sarva bhuteshu. And fourth line says, kaschit ardhavyapashrayah. Usually, we take shelter of a particular person to get our activities done in this material world. But here it is said, this particular person in Krishna consciousness, he does not depend or take shelter of any person, either man or demigod. Kaschit ardha vyapashraya. Vyapashraya means taking shelter for certain purpose, for achieving something for his own self. Because he is working for Krishna, he takes shelter purely of Krishna. So, sarva bhuteshu vyapashraya na kaschit. At any time he does not take shelter of any person, including any devata. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in the discharge of his obligation. And then the next verse that we discussed or read, it says, Tasmad asaktaha satatam karyam karma samachara. Tasmat means therefore. Why therefore is used by Krishna? Tasmat, therefore. Why we use therefore? We establish certain premise and then we say, therefore you should do this. So the train is going to start at 9:30 a.m. Therefore, you should reach the station by 9 o'clock. Something like that. So because of the consequence of the previous statement, the next statement is used. So tasmat, Why Krishna is using therefore? Because in the previous verse 3.18 that we discussed now, Krishna says that a person who is Atmarati or self-realized, advanced in Krishna consciousness, has no reason not to perform his Krishna conscious work. Na akruteneha. Just because he has no obligatory duty in this world doesn't mean he has no reason to even stop working for Krishna. So therefore, that is the reason why Krishna is used. Is using that word. Therefore, he should engage in Krishna conscious prescribed duties. How he should engage? Tasmad asaktaha. Asaktaha means without attachment. Satatam always. Tasmad asaktaha satatam karyam karma. You should do your prescribed duty. By doing like that, param apnoti purushaha. That person, purushaha, he attains param, the highest destination of going back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport the important thing. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person, even though he has no obligation to work in this material world because he is working for Krishna's satisfaction and not for his satisfaction, he still does work for Krishna, but under proper guidance and without attachment to the results. Without attachment to the result for himself, but he works for attaching results to Krishna. Because any activity you do, you have to produce a result. You cannot say, it's okay, whatever result comes, I'm fine. If you're playing a game, you should work to win. If you're waging the war, Krishna didn't say, oh, Pandavas, you fight and you lose the war. No, you are fighting to win the war. It's a different thing whether they're attached to the result or not, but they have to work to produce the result. Whether they become upset if the result doesn't come, that's a different thing. But there has to be a goal in working. That goal to be is for Krishna, not for yourself. So we have to work. That's why we have to work with proper guidance and without attachment to the result. So one time, one devotee came to temple. He was starting his journey in Krishna consciousness. So when we were discussing about working and taking guidance from the spiritual master, so he asked, who is our spiritual master? And I showed the deity of Srila Prabhupada in the temple. He is our spiritual master. And then he asked, where is he? I said he finished his pastimes way back in 1977. He left this planet. He left his body. And then how can you take guidance from him? He's asking. So then I was telling him what exactly Prabhupada taught us. Because when Prabhupada came to US and he was expanding his Krishna consciousness, this Krishna consciousness movement, similar questions were asked of him. Who is your spiritual master? Where is he? And are you getting guidance from him? Prabhupada said, my spiritual master is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And yes, even though he is physically not present, he passed away in 1936. So way back, Prabhupada came to the West in 1965, after 30 years. So, and all this while, Prabhupada had been doing so many activities, founding of Back to Godhead magazine in 1944, and he was preaching in Vrindavan. He took sannyasa, and he was writing Bhagavatam, publishing Bhagavatam, distributing back to Godheads, and he was making attempts to come to US. And he said, I'm constantly taking the guidance of my spiritual master. I don't feel the absence of my spiritual master. I'm always taking the association of my spiritual master. And Prabhupada explained further that there are two kinds of association we can have with a saintly person. The first is obviously a physical association. Physical means vapu seva. Vapu means physical body. You go and serve the physical body. You serve the feet, you massage the feet, you fan him, you cook for him, you take care of his body. That is vapu seva. But there is another important seva you can do to the spiritual master, and Prabhupada considered that as the highest, which is Vani seva. Vani seva means you serve not the body of the spiritual master, but the vibration of the spiritual master. Vani means vibration coming from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master. Chittete koriya aikya, arna koriho mane asha. Guru mukha padmavakya chittete koriya aikya, arna koriho mane asha. What it means is we sing this every day in the morning, Guru Puja. Whatever comes from the mouth of the spiritual master, lotus mouth of the spiritual master, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chittete Koriya Aikya. You make it your own. You agree with it fully, with your Chittam. Aikya means you agree with it fully. Accept it as it is and execute that instruction. Arna koriho mane asha. Don't aspire or don't consider any other thing as your guidance. So that is called Vani Seva. So even though a spiritual master may not be physically present, but through his vibration, he is always present. Just like Krishna is always present through his vibration in the form of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, what is the use of accepting and following Bhagavad Gita? It is as good as taking Krishna's guidance. Similarly, taking guidance of the spiritual master means taking guidance when he is physically present as well as when he is not physically present. More importantly, we should be guided by the vibration of the spiritual master. So sometimes people say, oh, you don't have a living guru. So Prabhupada condemned that idea. He said, what we have heard from the spiritual master, that is living. What we have heard from the spiritual master, that is living. So the order, the vibration of the spiritual master is the active principle in a devotee's life. Just like Prabhupada himself was guided by his spiritual master, even though his spiritual master was not physically present for several decades. And we should also be guided by Srila Prabhupada. He has given umpteen instructions, letters, lectures, books. Devotee several times asked how we should clarify any questions that will come when you are no longer physically present. This exact same question they asked. Prabhupada said, my books will give you answers. Even if you don't understand, if you read again and again, you will come to understand. See, what we need to understand is the spiritual subject matter is not merely understood by our intelligence. Even if the person is physically present and they tell you something, it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to understand. Just like, so there is a boy. So he goes and sits in the class. And then he asks a question. And the professor, the lecturer gives an answer. And the boy does not comprehend any single thing and he starts to say it is incorrect. The reason is that this boy is a kindergarten student first grade student. He is sitting in the 10th grade class and he is asking a question. The lecturer is giving an answer which can be understood by the 10th grade student. Complicated math. But the boy cannot understand because he has not come to the level of 10th grade to be able to understand. So, similarly, the spiritual subject matter becomes understood, revealed in the heart when we traverse the spiritual journey of serving the spiritual master. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te gnanam gnaninas tattvadarshinaha. I think so. Gnaninas tattvadarshinaha, the spiritual master, he gives you knowledge. He reveals the knowledge. Gnaninaha, tattvadarshinaha, because he is seeing the truth. So by serving the spiritual master, by going through from first grade to second grade to third grade, whatever spiritual master says, then it will be revealed in the heart. So it's not about physical presence. It is about our seva bhava, our attitude of service, and our faith in the vibration of the spiritual master. Then we will always be guided by the bona fide spiritual master. Just like how Prabhupada was guided. Now, so the two things were said. One is proper guidance and working without attachment. So there was one devotee during Prabhupada's times. He's there even now. And he accepted sannyasa. Prabhupada gave him a sannyasa. And then Prabhupada told him, we are building this temple. Your duty is to go and collect Lakshmi. And then he said, Prabhupada, I don't want to go and collect anymore. And then Prabhupada said, no, why you are saying like that? No, he said, no, you gave me sannyasa. Sannyasa means only preaching, no collection. What kind of sannyasa is this? And then Prabhupada said, he quoted this shloka from Bhagavad Gita, Anashritaha karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. A sannyasi is one who works as obligated without attachment. So Prabhupada preached to him. So whether you are a grihastha or wearing a saffron, a brahmachari or a sannyasi, if you are working as you are obligated, as you are given your duty by the spiritual master, you're doing it for service without attaching yourself to the result, as you are obligated, that is sannyasi, that is real renunciation. So Prabhupada, he said, my Guru Maharaj ordered me to go to the West. Usually sannyasis, they don't travel. They consider crossing the ocean as a contamination to their sannyasa order. Dealing with women or marrying their disciples, these are all not done usually by a sannyasi. Living with mlechas, sharing their refrigerator for your food, sharing their bathrooms. A sannyasi cannot do all of that. But see what all Prabhupada had to do to cross the ocean, to deal with the mlechas, yavanas, to raise them to the proper standard, to get them married. He had to do all of that because he is not personally attached for a sannyasa order. He is doing it as obligated to be done by the order of his spiritual master. And similarly, he said, my Guru Maharaj ordered me to go to the West and I have done that. I want to see that these buildings are built, but my disciples are not helping me. What can I do? So he expressed his frustration against him like that. The other time, there was another devotee. So, what happened in 1972? They were working on acquiring a building in one place, probably either Jhansi or Jaipur, one such place. It's a royal palace. Somebody, the Maharaja, who had inherited that property, he wanted to donate it to the temple. But somehow that relation, the devotees were maintaining some relation with that Maharaj, that Zamindar, whoever owned that, and that somehow the relations got broken, that Maharaj of Bharatpur. So, and then he got upset and he said, I'm not going to give it anymore. And so this devotee, one of the devotees who was given in charge of that operation, that activity, he became so morose. Oh, because of probably my not handling the situation, that relationship got broken, and we were supposed to get such a beautiful palatial building, but because of my wrongdoing, this has not happened. But he tried his best. He tried his best, and then he consulted Prabhupada. Prabhupada, because of me, I couldn't do this. I'm very feeling very bad about it. And then Prabhupada said, he looked kindly at him and said, you tried your best. Who can ask for more? And this such and such person is not a reliable person to deal with. And there was so much repair work to deal with as well. And eventually, because of his instability, he would have anyway not followed through with his word, and our relation would have anyway ended. So I think Krishna has another plan. That is when they shift their plans to build their own temple. So they focused on that. Krishna will provide. And then the devotee was also consulting this sloka from Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita that we are reading. How, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. Action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good and evil work. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the results, but acts on the behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities but is completely non attached. So, if you are working under the guidance of the spiritual master, in the order of the spiritual master, and are working without attachment for your own result, oh, by procuring this, I should become such and such. No, not like that. Oh, I'm doing it for Krishna, not for my personal self. So, as long as we do these two things, then you don't have to worry about the eventual good or bad result. And Prabhupada, he commended his disciples for doing the good work. And yet another time, one American devotee, a new devotee, asked Prabhupada, what is the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master? So usually it's a basic question. And so Prabhupada, he turned to one other senior disciple. He said, how do you answer him? And then that disciple started to answer. So the question was, what is the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master? So this senior disciple, he answered, the disciple does whatever the spiritual master asks. His relationship is that of the servant to the master. And then Prabhupada corrected him. He said, his relationship is that of a menial servant to the master. So the disciple said, the relationship is that of a servant to the spiritual master. But Prabhupada corrected it and said, the relationship is that of a menial servant. Even if the spiritual master asks him to clean the bathroom, he should do so. He will do so. Of course, it doesn't mean that he'll give that duty, but we have several examples in our scriptures and in our history how, like Narottam Das Thakur, he wanted to accept Lokanath Goswami as his spiritual master. But Lokanath Goswami was so humble, he wouldn't accept anybody as his disciple. So Narottam Das Thakur wanted to still serve him. He wouldn't accept his service. So what he would do, every day this Lokanath Goswami used to go to a field to attend the nature call, in those days. This is like 400-500 years ago. And so Narottam Das Thakur would wake up quite early. He would go and clean up that place so nicely. And for the nice experience of Lokanath Goswami. And though he was doing that for a few days, and then Lokanath Goswami suspected something is happening here. And then he came early the next day, and then he saw that Narottam Das Thakur is doing all this. And then he became very pleased with his menial service attitude. And he eventually accepted him as the disciple. Like even Ishvara Puri, who was the disciple of the great Madhavendra Puri, he was personally doing the menial service in the old age of Madhavendra Puri. He was even cleaning up the stool and urine, and because of which he got unlimited blessing, to the extent that Ishvara Puri became the spiritual master of even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Ishvara Puri as his spiritual master. So of course it doesn't mean one has to do only that kind of menial service, but what it means is, when you are willing to serve the spiritual master's instructions, orders, to any extent, that to that extent the blessing also will come. So the service should be done as a privilege, not as a burden. I'd like to stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.